Before I get things kicked off here, just wanted to kind of quickly go over a little bit of an introduction about who I am and some of my background here. So, as we've mentioned, my name is DiGregorio. I am currently a solutions architect over at empow. Been working in the security industry for just under 10 years now. I've been working for companies that provide all different software and consulting, topics from vulnerability management and penetration testing to insider threat intelligence and mitigation, also a bit of physical security services. But we'll get kind of hopped into slides here and really integrating on what we're seeing for integrating attack behavior intelligence into Logstash plugins. So a quick agenda for what we're going to be covering today is we'll briefly talk about a day in the life of a security analyst. We'll then discuss writing attack behavior security plugins and including why we recommend using MITRE ATT&CK and also some of the other classification techniques. We'll go over pipeline to pipeline and also our debugging tool that we have for it. Do a quick little demo, really just walking through a quick preview of what this information may look like in context within your environment. And last, I'll just kind of discuss who we at empow are and some of our contributions to the community here. All right. So, day in the life of security analysts, I mean, when it comes to this, as many of you probably know, alert fatigue is an ongoing issue. I mean, people are getting often hundreds, if not thousands, sometimes even tens or hundreds of thousands of alerts a day. And it's very just not manageable. It's something that it's come to a point where more often than not, analysts are only able to ingest and triage probably less than about 10% of those incoming alerts. So really, what can we do about getting some more meaningful information regarding what we can see out of these data sources that are coming in? And that's where MITRE ATT&CK comes in. So motivation behind why we're really choosing MITRE ATT&CK is MITRE is giving us a common and popular security language that we're going to be able to use, making it a lot easier for us to understand and classify these different threats within the environment. MITRE is also going to really help us with giving us the what, the how, and the why of an attack. And that's going to kind of break it down into different things that MITRE says. So tactics are really going to give us the why, the reason for performing the action. What would the attacker gain from this? So it could be credential access or discovery within the environment. And then we have the techniques, which the techniques are typically going to answer one of two questions. It's either going to be the how or the what. How being, how did the attacker actually achieve their objective? Or, what type of info do the attacker look to actually go after? This could be something such as dumping credentials to gain access to maybe more useful ones, software, network configuration discovery, and the list goes on and on. MITRE has a huge list of these on their sites that you can look through. So just kind of basic workflow of how things typically go and typically are played out here. I'm going to go ahead and actually bring up a pen here. So first thing we typically start off as is this adversary group. So once we start here, we're actually looking at who is potentially performing the attack. And they're going to go one of two different ways here. First way is that the adversary group is going to either start directly with a technique. So they're going to start from there, go with some type of technique, which is going to give us the how of how things are actually happening. The other option is that they may want to actually use some tools or security software within their environment to implement those techniques. So they may actually use those tools to get there, but regardless, they're going to somehow get to this technique usage of how they're getting in and how they're actually attempting to achieve their attack. If they are able to accomplish it and it is successful, that's when we get to the tactic and the why. So we get an understanding of what's going on within the environment, why they're performing this type of attack, again, to gain what type of access maybe. All right, so here's a couple of companies that are actually using MITRE ATT&CK. So I imagine that most of you or some of you at least have heard of one or two of these companies, if not most of them. So these are actually some companies, again, that are using MITRE ATT&CK and that use MITRE ATT&CK within their softwares typically. All right, so what really is the value that this is going to bring to an analyst using MITRE? So here we can actually see the name and the hash info of whatever this may be, in this case, some type of Trojan. But unless you're really into some of these different malwares and Trojans that are out there, or maybe the hashes that they might be, you're really not going to know what that means for the most part, or what that should mean to you. So MITRE is going to help bring that context in. So let's take a look here. So we have input capture, credential access, information regarding the detection. We're just saying it's found locally within the system. So we're going to search for a cause and identify the effect of what's going on. And that's really going to give us the insight into what may have occurred in the past and what might be happening within the future. So if we understand what's going on with this type of file in this case, again, we can try to get information regarding how did this may have got into our environment and what may be happening if they want to go forward. This is going to potentially help you with identifying who's next within your environment. So this is, again, going to bring you to that information of what might be the root cause and what they're looking for, which could identify, again, that who's next, whether it be maybe they're going after financial services and they're trying to do some lateral movement within the environment. You can get that kind of understanding. Big thing to take from this is know what to look for. You're going to be able to find that with MITRE ATT&CK. You're going to be able to get a better idea and know what to look for going forward. Okay, so here, we're just going to go over a couple examples of how MITRE is actually helping us understand these raw logs. In this example here, you can actually see a log from Proofpoint tab. And this appears actually to be some type of phishing attack based off of what we can see here on the class. You can see the class is phish. So rather than just seeing some highlighted attack, we see phish here, we can potentially try to pull that out. But there's many different styles of phishing attacks. And what we're going to be able to see is we can also see this URL. And there is the URL in there. So with that, tell that this is a spear phishing attack in this case, rather opposed to something like a spear phishing attachment or so on. So we can get an idea and use MITRE to map this type of behavior to spear phishing links. Another example we have here, this one's coming from OSEC, and this is an alert showing some registry manipulation. So in this one here, we see what's important is that, yes, this is attacking the registry, but rather than just being some simple or modified registry or evasion or persistence is the key here. We're going to the run folders. So this is going to be those run keys, those startup folders. It's going to give that persistence in here rather than just some registry manipulation, again, for that evasion style of tactic. All right. So taking a look at MITRE classification, what happens if we don't have that data from MITRE? What can we do? So here, again, we can see an example. We have the name, we have the hash, and we have a basic description saying it's some type of malware or Trojan. So outside of that, we really don't have much. So what can we do? Well, we recommend using some other type of classification services. This could be, in this case, we're going to look at natural language processing and using natural language processing to get an understanding of the environment. So here, our NLP engine, our natural language processing, is able to understand that this attack and this threat is actually looking to perform some type of input capture. That's by stealing usernames and passwords. So it's pretty easy to read off that description here. Now, as an analyst, you typically need to go out and look at these yourself, but having some type of processing engine like natural language processing and using MITRE, you can go ahead and get that information collected and bring that back into the environment. Additionally, it's also given us other information. So you can see that it's trying to gather passwords and system information. It's trying to do that via collecting keystrokes. So we can see how they're trying to perform the attack. So with that information, we have now inputted, it is input capture, it is trying to get credential access into the environment so we can get a better understanding of what's going on. Again, this is going to map to that MITRE so that it's easy to understand, easy to communicate going forward. In this case, if you have an NLP engine, you can also look for past causes as well as those future events. So in this case, reading further into it, we can see, all right, this is likely coming from some type of spam email. And it's also saying that it's coming from a mail attachment or malicious website. So again, you get that past cause, you're now able to go ahead and look into what might be happening in your environment prior to these type of attacks actually coming into play. All right, so when it comes to actually looking at MITRE classification, we have some additional information there, but we also have what we call our pipeline-to-pipeline technology. So when it comes to Elastic, they've actually introduced something new. We actually created something to help you guys out if you guys are familiar with it, which I'll get into a bit more in just a moment. The reason is when it comes to creating plugins, each vendor is a bit different. So some have their own log formats, others may have some custom fields to parse or values to look for in those fields and so on. We've done something to kind of help you out here, which is creating a repository of Logstash plugins and different products and vendors that are open source and ready for you guys to use. And now the benefit of using the plugin resource that we have and the repository that we have is that all of our plugins are going to be based off of ECS, or Elastic Common Schema. They're going to contain both internal as well as an optional external threat intelligence-based enrichment. We're also going to, for that, have the internal just being the standard parser for the system. The external is actually going to be our own empow classification center. So this is another open source contribution for you guys. And this here is free with registration within our sites. And last, our own parsers are really taking advantage of the, again, Logstash pipeline-to-pipeline technology. So to get a better understanding of pipeline-to-pipeline technology, if you guys aren't familiar, pipeline-to-pipeline technology was introduced in version 6.7. This enables us to pretty much easily write, maintain, manage, and set up Logstash parsers. It's also going to allow us to actually reuse some of the specific functionality within these parsers, allowing us to change, update, add, and actually delete some of the different functionality within the environment. Looking at the model we have here, so for empow structure, we typically use this structure here, and this is what we typically recommend, which is we're starting off with that single port for virtual input. From there, you're going to have a dispatcher, and that's going to send it off to each of the individual parsers within the environment to collect the specific information for that vendor. Once that's done, you then have the choice to do one of two things. You could either go ahead and go directly out to your output, or you have the option to go ahead and use our empow's classifier, which is, again, an NLP classifier. You can have it go to this classification center. Again, this is free registration within our site, so you can use this as you like. Once you've gone through that, you can then have it go directly to your output, and you have that additional information off those systems. And when it comes to setting up pipeline to pipeline, it is a manual configuration. So because of that, there is often a chance that you may actually see some misconfiguration happen. And this tends to happen fairly often for some and then not so often for others. So we've actually done something to help you out with that as well. And that's actually another open source goodie for you guys to look at, which is our pipeline viewer. So it's a pretty simple tool that we have. We'll be able to go ahead and take a look. It's going to look at your current multi-pipeline structure. And it's also going to help with detecting some of those common configuration problems that you might run into using pipeline to pipeline. All right, so going to go over a bit of the demo information. This is, again, just really going to be a quick look of what this may look like in your environment if you are able to integrate MITRE information into the system. So this is an actual look into our Kibana dashboard here. We have some events here that's come through the system, and you can go ahead and jump in, see these information breaking down pretty simply within the environment as you would with really any normal system. Now, the difference here is when you're bringing that type of information in, we now have some additional information that we can look at, which in this case, we're calling our threat techniques. So I can go ahead and hit add here. And what that's going to do is it's now going to collapse it and give us a panel to look at for threat techniques. This dash is meaning that there's none that's associated with that particular one, but we can take a look and say, all right, now we want to see exactly what we're looking for. So whether it be, all right, I want to see log-based brute force, anti-scan, so on. I'm going to go ahead and just choose that I want to see any in this case. So I just want to see what's in the environment, what we have as our option. So In this case, we can see things like exfiltration, abnormal data transfer, log-based brute force, where we can go ahead and break that down, see those raw logs when we want to, and get some information of exactly what might be happening in the environment, along with how the things are happening. So again, we get that information about what type of techniques are being used within the environment to get a better idea of how this is potentially affecting us, and a lot cleaner information rather than just seeing, yeah, it's a log and we don't really know what it might be. This thing is going to allow you to, again, quickly scan over these type of alerts, these type of raw logs, and say, which one do I care about the most? Maybe it's, hey, I have a keylogger here. I need to investigate that most. Additionally, you can do some visualizations with this type of information. So if you want, you can go ahead and visualize it in more of a kind of a graph of what might be happening in your environment most. You can see things like anti-scans, exfiltrations that are happening more often, maybe some brute forces versus others that may be going into the environment, such as browser modifiers, pups, DOSes, things like that within the environment. All right, so a bit about empow. So we actually provide a AI-based SIEM. This is a powerful back engines, and this is also giving you a cause and effect type algorithm that's going to help you get some more information along with some of these other data sources and integrations such as MITRE. And this is going to be a solution that really takes about less than one security analyst to manage. Because of the fact that we have these cause and effect algorithms, and because we have these engines, we're actually doing a lot of processing in the background and doing this really without any rules that you need to create. We're founded in 2014. We have a headquarters out in Boston. We also have an R&D center out in Tel Aviv. We currently have about 9 issues, patents, and 6 more pending. Quick recap of some of the open source things that you're going to see within the environment. So for empow, we do provide that Logstash logs plugin repo. And that repo, again, is going to give you access to a couple different vendors and products for Logstash plugins. They're all written in ECS. They're very easy to use, and they do take advantage of that pipeline-to-pipeline technology. We have the Kibana dashboards per device logs that you can find from there. We also have that pipeline viewer. The pipeline viewer is going to help you out with creating those plugins for pipeline-to-pipeline technology, as well as some debugging there. And then finally, we have the plugin extension for our empow Threat Classification Center. Again, that's free with subscription. You can find that on our site through the open source tabs. All right, so just really what I had for you today. I do want to first thank you guys for registering and kind of following up with what I had to present here today. We'll also take a look at the Q&A and some of the questions that may have been submitted during this. But please feel free to use that Q&A to ask any questions that you may have there.
All right, it looks like we have one from Kevin. He says, any limitations on the threats_classifier plugin?
So let's take a look here. We'll go actually to that here. Looks like it's not coming through. So threats classifiers. So we do have a couple pieces for that. The big things for the classifiers is really going to be, again, pulling from MITRE ATT&CK. Because of that, the only real limitations is what we have for MITRE. So we're going to do the correlation from there. So as long as we can make that correlation with understanding from either our classification center or MITRE, we can go ahead and submit that information in and give you that information off the sites. If you don't have that, then it's going to be some potential other resource to use for classification within that. So another repository of some sort that's going to give you that type of information about that actual either name source or hash or whatever it may be. All right. Any other questions about the presentation or anything else that you may want to see regarding some of the information I populated here? All right, so I'll quickly show where we can find the open source information here. So if you do have any questions, again, you can do the free registration for our open source here. Simply click on the open source link. Once you do so, you'll be able to find all of those plugins that we've gone over, as well as access for registration of the classification center and some of the other things I've mentioned regarding open source technology that we provide to the community. All right. Any other vendors in the horizon? So regarding some of the plugins that we have, is that what the question's regarding? Yeah, so as we kind of go through the options of creating different plugins for this, we will actually add what we can to these different repositories here. So it is GitHub that you can grab. We are looking to add more to it. It is all based off of how much extra resources we have. So this is an ongoing effort. We are doing this, the goodness of our hearts. So some of them will take more time than others, but we do definitely plan on adding more to this. All right. And this here is where you're actually looking at extending that functionality here. So again, this is a classification center registration. You can simply sign up here, and once you do so, you'll have access to that full classification center as needed. All right. Looks like questions have stopped for now. Not sure if go ahead and stop sharing for now on my side. We can switch over to Cami's side here. And any other questions that you guys have, do feel free to ask those throughout the presentations, and we'll do our best to answer them in either the chat or following up to Cami's presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. That was super interesting to see. Thanks for running through that for us. All right, so Cami Lewis is going to be presenting now on Elastic SIEM. She's a community advocate at Elastic for security.
Hey, so can everyone hear me and see my screen?
Yes, to both.
Perfect. Okay, so hi everyone. As Faith said, I'm Cami Lewis. I've been with Elastic for about 2 years. I've been in security for about 20 years, doing various things in InfoSec compliance and security operations primarily. So I'm just going to dive right in. I'm going to talk about all of our capabilities in the Elastic SIEM today. And the data you're going to see and all of the detections are provided by Elastic out of the box. And we're running 7.7 in cloud for this demo. So before I get into where the real meat of the SIEM is, I just want to highlight this overview page here, which I think it's often overlooked, the value that's on this page. One thing to mention is that we'll take data from anywhere, whether it be cloud, network, user, and this breakdown of events here, down here at the bottom, really highlights that these are default modules from a beat that you can download off the internet. We have audit beat data here, which is looking at users, packages, processes. We also have file beat, as well as packet beat. So packet beat is getting all of our network data. So we're getting all of this information ready to use almost immediately out of the box. And one more thing that's worth highlighting is that in security, speed is really everything. Speed is the best defense. So if you can see here, we loaded almost 14 million events almost instantly. So that's pretty phenomenal if you think about it. There's also a few other elements I want to highlight on this overview page. Over here on the left side, the recent cases. If you're an analyst, perhaps that you're watching this webinar, this might be a really good place for you to start your day. This is a new feature. This is where you can collaborate with other analysts, perhaps in your SOC. Recent timelines as well is also really valuable, where you can look at recent investigations that have been worked on by other analysts. And then security news. This is a pretty cool feature that we added as well. Oftentimes companies have security research groups that are releasing information pretty regularly, but it often comes through like an email, a marketing email, maybe on their website. It's not often that information is right in the hands of the analyst. And as you can see here, the analyst doesn't even have to leave the SIEM to see sort of the latest information that would apply to their investigations. So let's move on to some of the meat of the SIEM. I've preloaded some of these pages here just in case my connection died. So the host view. So this gathers as much metadata from the host as possible, and that's the job of the beats. So there's a couple of beats processors that do this. They're on by default, so typically as soon as you install the beat, you already have this level of rich information. We're collecting the operating system info, the cloud provider data, the IP addresses and MAC addresses. We're also collecting every single IP address for every interface. So hosts cannot hide, which is really nice also. The charts at the top here are a nice high-level place to see what's happening. So for those of you that might be coming from an analyst background, you might notice this large number of failed logins right away, and that might be a really good place to start your investigation. Authentications is also rendered in a chart down here below and a table as well. We have uncommon processes, which is looking at what's uncommon for that time period. Uncommon processes is a free feature for everyone as part of the basic license. We have anomalies, which is a platinum feature. Anomaly detection is not turned on in this demo, but this is part of machine learning. So I'm not going to demo that for you, but again, that's part of the platinum license. And then we have rendered data for events and external alerts as well. So there's a lot of context here that can be really useful to an analyst. Let's take a look at the network view next. So this is a map that came in 7.4 with point-to-point connections, and we added these icons as well in 7.5. You can filter on source and destination within the map if you were to click on these various icons and drag and drop the elements. Again, we have high-level information, which is handy for both the SOC analyst as well as maybe the SOC manager types. So these high-level charts here are another good place to start looking. If you want to dive deeper into the data, again, the same type of view as the host view down below, where we have DNS, HTTP, TLS. Similar type of view with the charts and the rendered data in the table below. Just scroll through some of these views here so that you can see. And again, we don't have machine learning turned on. So there's quite a bit of data getting picked up. Here in the external alerts, you can see we're pulling in quite a bit of Suricata data. So this is a significant amount of data which you can use to start your investigations. Let's look at detections and timelines next. So this is really the heart of the SIEM. There's lots of ways you can kick off an investigation depending on whether you're a visual person or whether you prefer the technical detail. There are multiple options out of the box with detections, and there's really no restrictions. So you can also create custom detections. There's just a lot of flexibility. So the risk score and the host name are super important in this view. You can see these are all from the same host for these first 6 events here. So that really says we should probably focus on that machine. If you saw multiple machine names here with the same detections, it might be a sign of a distributed attack. So having the host name is really important, and I can't stress that enough. You can start investigating these detections directly in the timeline just by clicking on this timeline view over here and dragging any of these events into the timeline. So let me just show you what that looks like. So that's a really handy feature for an analyst. You can change date and time range as well. You can change filters. I mean, there's just really a lot of flexibility. And as I said, you can create custom rules. If I go back over here, manage your signal detection rules. There's just a lot that you can do here in the detections view. I want to show you just a bit more about timelines real quickly. So let me go to that screen. Again, without focusing on the detail of what these timelines are investigating, I just want to highlight a few of the features for you. So let me click on this first timeline. So one of the cool things about timeline is you can leave notes for any of your peers that might also be working on an investigation with you. And these notes will be visible in other views as well. So they carry through the SIEM. You can pin the timeline as well, which is a pretty nice feature if you want to be able to view it on the host or network view. So this is very useful for investigations. As I said, any notes that you may leave are saved automatically and they're persisted in other views. We also have markup support. So if you want to include GIFs in this notes view or maybe screenshots, you can do that as well right here. Markup support is really powerful. Just as an example, you could add threat hunting playbooks right here for your analysts. So they no longer would need to leave the SIEM to go searching maybe on a wiki or another website. You could just leave the information that they need right here. So that's really useful as well. And lastly, I'll just quickly show you the cases view. This is brand new. This is brand new to 7.7, and this is a really cool feature. It allows for multiple people to collaborate on a single investigation by opening a case. So you can integrate with external systems as well if you want to use a third-party ticketing system, or if you wanted to use a case management tool such as ServiceNow, you can do that also. Multiple people can leave comments, as you can see here. They can leave comments in the case, and then whoever's working on that case can view exactly what's been happening. You can attach a timeline here, or you can also attach multiple timelines to a case, which is really nice. So that's an overview of the SIEM capabilities about as quickly as I can showcase them. I know I had only about 10 or so minutes to do this, but I think we have just a little bit of extra time. So if there's any Q&A, I think we can move on to that, Faith.
Okay. I'm not seeing any questions yet. I think you did a great job explaining Cami, so maybe you stunned them into silence.
Yeah, I went through it really fast, probably a little too fast, but tried to squeeze it all in 10 minutes.
Well, if there aren't any questions now, I will say that we have another Meetup on SIEM coming up on July 9th. So if you join the AMER virtual group and want to hear more about SIEM, that's a great place to go to hear more down the road. Oh, we do have a question. Okay, I am new to SIEM. Is there anywhere to start practicing like a threat hunting, that you would recommend?
So probably what I would recommend is going onto our training page on our elastic.co website. And there is an introductory SIEM course there, as well as an introductory endpoint security course. And that's what I would start with. We have something called the Elastic Guide to Threat Hunting. It's a 70-page guide on getting started with threat hunting. But that, I don't know that that's readily available on our website. Faith, do we have a way to provide links or
I just the SIEM fundamentals training and linked that in the chat. Is that what you were talking about, or was there?
Yeah, SIEM fundamentals, and then the endpoint security fundamentals is also a really useful course.
This one over as well. All right.
And then I'm going to see if I can find quickly before we leave a link for the Elastic Guide to Threat Hunting.
Yeah, so both of those trainings are free and on demand too. So just so you know. Oh, got another question. Okay, any docs coming out on how to surface external alerts into Elastic SIEM, what ECS fields are required, etc.?
Any docs coming out?
That's what it says.
That's the question?
Yeah.
Not sure I understand what they're asking.
Is there any documentation coming out on how to surface external alerts into Elastic SIEM, what ECS fields are required, etc.?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of any, but I can double check with our product management group. And if there's a way I can get back to this person, I'm happy to do that.